Hi, everyone.
Hi, Christine.
Hey, Antoinette, how are you?
I'm doing well. I saw that it started recording. Is there a way to pause that until we actually start so we can just?
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. I'll monitor your waiting room for you, Antoinette. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for today's virtual information session with our diplomat in residence, Antoinette Hurtado. I will let you go ahead and do all of the things. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much. That sounds good. Welcome, welcome. I'm loving seeing the comments in the chat, what everyone is studying. I always tell folks 99.9% of the time, whatever your major is, we have a career for you. And I'm certainly seeing that be the case by what folks are putting in the chat: psychology, information systems, some Spanish, lots of other things. So we are, as you noticed, recording today. And so this is actually a two-part series that we're doing us with UNLV's Career Services and International Programs Office to celebrate International Education Week, which UNLV is celebrating this week. So today's session is going to be focused on our careers. What are all the options? How do you apply? How do you make yourself competitive? All that good stuff. So we'll have some time to really delve deep into that. And then tomorrow, same time, same place, we're going to have a second session that's going to be focused on all of our student programs, so internships, study abroad scholarships, our career pipeline fellowships, a bunch of good stuff. So today we're going to focus on careers, and tomorrow we'll focus on the student programs. Now, we're going to be recording both today's session and tomorrow's session to be a resource for students. So where can you find the recording later? If you are interested, I'll just go ahead and put the link in the chat here. UNLV on Career Launch actually has a page for me as the diplomat in residence. And so this is where you can also see some helpful links, the next time that I'll be on campus, other good information there. So let's go ahead and get started. We're about 5 after the hour and definitely lots of good stuff to cover today. So let me go ahead and get ready to share my slides, and then we will delve in. Okay, now while I'm sharing my slide, it's a little bit hard to also see the chat, but once I get through a couple of key themes as we go along, I'll periodically check the chat to see if there are any questions. But definitely after the slides, we can delve into any questions you might have. So what are we going to be talking about today? U.S. Department of State opportunities. So that's what our session will focus on today. What are the career opportunities with us? So to kick that off, first of all, what is the U.S. Department of State? So the U.S. Department of State is a federal government agency. Our agency's mission focuses on advancing U.S. foreign policy overseas. So we're in the business of international relations, diplomacy, working with other governments to advance America's interests and Americans' interests overseas. We are headquartered, as all federal government agencies are, in Washington, D.C. And we also have, of course, hundreds of embassies and consulates all around the world. Now, outside of Washington, D.C., in the States, we do have some facilities across the U.S., passport agencies, field offices, things like that. But in terms of primarily where we're located, and therefore primarily where the careers and the jobs are located, we are in Washington, D.C., and then overseas at our embassies and consulates. So that is a brief overview of what we do as an agency, again, advancing U.S. foreign policy interests overseas. I am your diplomat in residence. I'm Antoinette Hurtado. You may have seen me on campus. I've been around for a bunch of different sessions, class visits, different events. I am what's called a Foreign Service Officer. It's one of the many careers that you can have in the U.S. Department of State as a diplomat. And I've been doing this for 20 years now. So I've served all over the world. I've served in Australia, Brazil, Afghanistan, Italy. I've done some assignments in Washington, D.C. at our headquarters. And then now I'm doing this assignment as a diplomat in residence, which basically means I'm serving as the regional recruiter. So there are 17 of us diplomats in residence nationwide. We all cover different regions, and our job is to get the word out about U.S. Department of State opportunities, help people see what could be the right fit for them, and encourage them to apply. So a couple of things I want to point out on this screen. The bottom right-hand side in terms of careers, and one note about eligibility for everything that we're going to talk about today in terms of careers, and then also tomorrow for the student programs. We are requiring U.S. citizenship at the time of application. So that's pretty par for the course for U.S. federal government jobs, is that you have U.S. citizenship. So that is the basic requirement, and then there are some additional requirements depending on the various careers and programs. Also, the majority of, or actually everything that I'm going to talk about today in terms of careers can be found on careers.state.gov later if you want to take a peek and do more of a deep dive. And then on the screen here, you'll see two ways to be in touch with me. So the first is my email, which is dirsouthwest@state.gov. I check that every day. That's my recruitment email, and I respond to every email that I get. So if you haven't had a response from me, it's because I didn't get it. Sometimes with the firewalls that happens, but I do receive most emails. And then also I have a Diplomat in Residence Southwest LinkedIn page where I'm posting daily different opportunities as they arise, certainly different careers as they open, different information sessions where we do a deep dive on those various careers, when internships open, etc. So those are two ways to be in touch. So give me just a second. I'm going to stop sharing for just a moment and just check something on our settings here. One moment. Christine, if you are there and if we're able to turn off the waiting room so then everyone who joins can just join this link directly, that would be great. I was letting in a couple more people from the waiting room, but if we're able to have students just go ahead and join directly.
Yeah, I'm trying to work on that, but I'll keep playing around with it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, so going back to the slides then, as I said, I am your local resource, and if you have questions, you want to follow up with me later on anything that we're talking about today, you can absolutely feel free. So let me first say a couple of words about the foreign service careers, and I'm going to start in just a second to kind of do an overview of what are the career opportunities. But basically, in the U.S. Department of State, we have two main workforces: the Foreign Service and the Civil Service. In fact, let me go forward a few slides. For my visual learners like myself. So we have the Foreign Service and the Civil Service. The Foreign Service are our diplomatic career. So everyone like myself who is a diplomat living and working at our embassies and consulates overseas. And we also then have our domestic workforce, which is called the Civil Service. Most of those positions will be at our headquarters in Washington, D.C., but we do have some of those positions across the U.S. at those passport agencies and other field offices that I was talking about. Now, we're going to focus today on the Foreign Service careers, but I can answer questions on the Civil Service. It's just for each of these careers, there are very different application processes. So depending on what you're interested in, then we can absolutely cover that. So Foreign Service and Civil Service represent the two main workforces. Now, with the Foreign Service, as a diplomat, I'm always upfront with folks, it is a lifestyle, right? To be a diplomat, you're a diplomat 24/7. So that doesn't, it's not a very 9-to-5 job, and there are things happening around the world, and sort of what your day-to-day looks like depends on what kind of diplomatic career you have, what country you're serving in, what's going on in the world at any given time. So I like to show these photos too, because they're very different, photos from different assignments that I've had, but also reflect that this is a lifestyle. As a diplomat, you're changing assignments every couple of years. If a language is required for where you're going, we will teach you a foreign language. You're doing something a bit different in every assignment, which for me was great because I was always someone who got bored easily. So changing jobs basically every 2 to 3 years without actually having to change employers was something that intrigued me. And I always wanted to travel the world. I wanted to do good in the world. I wanted to try to help make the world a better place. And so those were a couple of things that drew me to this lifestyle and career. But just a note to think about it, as a lifestyle, the diplomatic careers at least. And is this something that excites you? As it excited me, when I first heard about this some years ago. And can you see this for you and any, potential family you may have down the road? Now, we are looking for those from all academic backgrounds. So I saw in the chat, thank you so much for those who answered different majors that folks are studying, which is fantastic. We have careers for basically almost anything. And so we are looking for folks from all academic and professional backgrounds. Now, there are a lot of reasons why one might join the U.S. Department of State. I was just kind of mentioning a few: a sense of service, a sense of reward, doing something good in the world. Getting paid to travel the world is also a plus. Learning different languages. We give a strong emphasis on professional development. So we have leadership training, we have professional skills job training for whatever it is, whichever career you're doing. The language training, as I mentioned earlier. But there are also some very real financial benefits too that I do want to cover a bit today. And that's going to be mostly relevant to our foreign service careers. So I'm going to come back to this in a second. And let me talk first about what are some of the career opportunities. So again, you heard me mention there are foreign service careers and then there are domestic civil service careers. We also have another overseas job that's called the Consular Fellows Program. If you do happen to have fluency in one of those 4 languages that you see on the screen, so Chinese, Arabic, Portuguese, and Spanish. We'll come back to that too. Let's start with the foreign service careers. There are a lot of career opportunities here. And again, surely that are connected to all of your majors in some way. So in the foreign service, as a diplomat, you can take 2 paths to becoming a diplomat. You can be a generalist diplomat, which is what I am, and that's what's called the Foreign Service Officer career, or FSO as we call it. Now, as a generalist, you're going to work on a lot of different things across your career. I've worked on counterterrorism issues, human rights issues, environmental issues, trafficking in persons issues, Russia-Ukraine issues, all sorts of things. So you're a generalist as an FSO, as a Foreign Service Officer. So you don't have to have a certain kind of degree or education or background. You can come from any professional background, any academic background, and be a generalist. Though you are a generalist as a Foreign Service Officer, we do ask that you choose one of those 5 areas that you see on the screen to focus your career on. So consular, econ, political, management, and public diplomacy. Now, let me go ahead and I'm going to take it kind of right to left here. What do each of these 5 things do? So as a public diplomacy foreign service officer, that's what I am actually. That's my career track, is public diplomacy. And we do everything that is public facing to engage foreign audiences, to tell the story of America. Of course, that's talking about our foreign policy, why we have it, why we think it's good, why we think it's going to help us achieve the goal. But we also do a good amount of cultural diplomacy as well. As you can imagine, varying on the country, depending on the country, maybe our foreign policy is popular there, maybe it's not, maybe it's a more tense relationship, maybe a more difficult relationship to manage. So if that is the case, even then, for all the countries that I've served in, and I certainly know this is the case for many of my colleagues, there is at least always something in common. There is at least always something to begin a conversation and build those people-to-people ties. Often that's something about our culture. Maybe they like our musicians, they like our athletes, they like our artists, our films, whatever it might be. So we do public diplomacy and engage foreign audiences, certainly on our foreign policy, but also we have a strong component of cultural diplomacy as well to build those relationships. So in public diplomacy, I've done media relations, I've managed events, I've managed social media properties, I manage exchange programs, lots of different things. Then moving to the left, we have management. You can also focus on, management. Now, this is going to be a broad management career. It's sort of like our MBA type career, but you do not need an MBA to do it. And when I say management, they're going to focus mostly on 3 aspects of management: human resources, financial management, so the budgeting, accounting, finance piece, and then also operations and logistics management. So it's really an opportunity to have a broad experience in how to make things run so that we can get about the business of foreign policy. And this role is a critical role. And then when we turn to economic and political, these are probably the more common or at least maybe what people think in their minds when they hear about a diplomat. They probably are thinking econ and political officers, because in their mind, you're probably thinking about someone who's going into the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in another country, talking to government officials about various issues, saying what the U.S. position is, trying to, get them to be with us on a certain issue. That's what econ and political officers do. Now, the issues that they work on are a bit different. So for econ officers, they are working on economic related foreign policy issues. Now, I will say it's not just econ issues, actually. So under econ, they also have a portfolio that's called ESTH. It stands for Environment, Science, Technology, and Health. So if any of those issues are also of interest to you, then econ could be the appropriate career track for you. Political is basically everything that econ is not, which is a lot. It's arms control issues, it's human rights issues, democracy, rule of law, all the things. I mean, you just have to pick up a newspaper on any given day and see about 12 or more different political foreign policy issues that we are working on at any given moment. Then we also have consular, and you'll see that consular features below in the Consular Fellows Program. So there are two ways to do consular work in the US Department of State, and I'll explain the difference. So first, as a Foreign Service officer doing consular work, what is consular work? It is twofold. Half of consular work is interviewing foreign nationals who need a visa to come to the United States, applying US immigration law, and deciding if they're eligible for the visa. The other half of consular work is helping American citizens overseas. This is as important as our foreign policy mission, and it's actually one of the reasons we even have embassies and consulates overseas. So what do those kinds of services and support look like? It could be something as simple as, let's say you're traveling abroad and you lose your passport. Where do you go? The nearest US embassy or consulate, right? So we could help to get you a new passport or renew your passport, or maybe there are Americans living overseas and they need a US notary for whatever reason. They're selling real estate, they're doing power of attorney. They'll come into us. But it could also be a more serious situation. An American gets robbed overseas, or an American gets arrested overseas, or we're evacuating Americans overseas, whether due to natural disaster or civil unrest. We're evacuating Americans from Lebanon right now. So unfortunately, it could be any number of situations where we would provide assistance to Americans. So that is what consular work is. Then just a quick note on eligibility for Foreign Service Officer, and then I'll transition to Consular Fellows Program, which is another way to do consular work with us as a job. So for the Foreign Service Officer generalist diplomatic career, in terms of eligibility, you just have to be a US citizen. You have to be at least 20 years old, and that's it. You don't have to have a certain kind of degree, because you're going to be working on a lot of different things. And just to, as an example, to show you how your degree doesn't even necessarily need to match with any of these five, I have a Foreign Service Officer colleague. She's a diplomat in residence for another state, and she does the management career track. And her bachelor's degree was in, of course, I just forgot the moment I meant to say that. Her bachelor's degree was in chemistry. So it's really just about what you want to get up and do every day when you go to the office. So again, you can come from any background and do any of the five under Foreign Service Officer. We will give you the training so that you know how to do those things. So consular work, again, you can do that as a Foreign Service Officer generalist, or you can also do that as a consular fellow. So what is this opportunity? It's actually not a fellowship or a program. So I know the name might be a little misleading. And it's called a non-career because it is an overseas job doing consular work, but you can only do it for a maximum of 5 years. Now, in a number of circumstances, you could extend to a 6th or 7th year, but let's just say basically it's 5 years. And so you would be doing consular work overseas for about 5 years, which is 2 countries, 2 different assignments. So whichever of those languages you speak, you would be going to a country that speaks one of those 4 languages and doing consular work for up to 5 years. Now, a lot of the folks who do the Consular Fellows Program do go on to apply to be a Foreign Service Officer, generalist, or a specialist, or civil service, and they have very high acceptance rates into applying for those different careers because they've been doing work at a U.S. embassy or consulate for some years already. So the Consular Fellows Program, for the eligibility, you just, again, have to be a U.S. citizen, be at least 20 years old, and then just speak one of those 4 languages: Chinese, Arabic, Portuguese, or Spanish. And again, you can come from any background. So for the Foreign Service Officer career and the Consular Fellows Program, you do not need to have a degree in hand. A degree is technically not required. And so you could still be a student and start your application process. So now let's look at the Foreign Service Specialist careers. So again, in the Foreign Service, you can be a generalist diplomat or you can specialize as a diplomat. If you want to specialize as a diplomat, then there are about 20 careers here. And this is the full list here. So we have a number of careers under administration. We have careers for engineers. We have careers for those who are studying IT fields, so the information systems fields that a couple of folks mentioned in the chat. Absolutely, we have careers for that. We're hiring in the medical field. We're hiring in the law enforcement field. Lots of different opportunities here. Let me say a couple of words on some of the more common, more popular careers here. So under administration, you'll see that we have 4 careers there. Now, when I was discussing the Foreign Service Officer Generalist career, where you could choose any one of these 5, one of the ones that you could choose was management. And I said that you could do operations, human resources, or financial management. Now, that's also the same. We're just having a little quick technical issue. Let me come back to that in 1 second. So those 3 areas, human resources, operations, and financial management, that you could do as a Foreign Service officer in the management track, you can also do as a Foreign Service specialist. If you just want to do financial management or you just want to do operations or just HR, then you can also do that here. And we also have an office management diplomatic career here as well. Now, on the Foreign Service specialist careers, many different careers here, all doing very different things. Now, because for these ones, you are specializing in some way, shape, or form, the eligibility is going to be a little bit different. Of course, U.S. citizen, yes, and at least 20 years old, yes. But each of these may have a certain kind of degree that you would need and or a certain kind of professional experience. So let me take the diplomatic technology officer as an example, because I know we have some folks here studying information systems. So the diplomatic technology officer specialist career. This is a career where you're essentially an IT diplomat. You are going to be managing our classified and unclassified networks. Big responsibility. We're looking for great people to come and do this with us. It's a diplomatic career, moving around. I should say in the Foreign Service careers, whether generalist or specialist, as a diplomat, you are expected to spend about half of your career overseas. Depending on which career, it could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more, or a lot more. But in the Foreign Service, the expectation is that about half of your career will be overseas. So for the diplomatic technology officer role, where you're an IT diplomat with us, the eligibility is that you have to have a degree in any IT related field. For us, IT is pretty broad, so it could be computer science, cybersecurity, information systems, even electrical engineering. A lot of different majors would qualify there. Or if you have already some professional experience in IT, then that could qualify you. And you'll see that with a lot of these as well. It's sort of a mix and match. If you have a degree in a certain area, or if you have professional experience, then that could also qualify. Now, let me quickly check the chat. I think we have a question here on that. Do you need to know a language? You do not need to know a foreign language before you join the U.S. Department of State. If learning a foreign language is required for the specific role that you are doing overseas, then we will give you language training for that role. So diplomatic technology officer is one career. Those under administration, you could be a financial management officer, do operations, do HR, do office management. We also have our own law enforcement arm called the Diplomatic Security Service. And you'll see 4 diplomatic careers under there. It could be a courier, a technician, an engineer, or a special agent. So the special agent career, just again to show kind of the different eligibility that's required. As a special agent, you would be a federal law enforcement officer with us. So you would have a badge, you would carry a gun, and you'd be working on security issues, but from a much different perspective than sort of a traditional beat cop. And I'll explain that more in a second. But to be eligible for the special agent role, you just have to have a bachelor's degree in anything. And that's it. So the eligibility for each of these things definitely varies. Now, what do special agents do? This could be something that's of interest to folks here. It's one of our popular foreign service careers. They are working on international security issues. And basically their portfolio has 3 components. They do VIP protection. So they protect the Secretary of State. As you probably know, the Secret Service does protection for the president and the vice president. The diplomatic security special agents do protection for the Secretary of State. They also do protection for different foreign dignitaries who come to the U.S. They do protection for the Dalai Lama, for the British royal family. They do protection for American Olympians at the Olympics. So They were in Paris protecting our Olympians there for the Summer Olympics. They also do criminal investigation work, and they also manage millions of dollars worth of security programs that keep us safe overseas, keep our information safe, keep our facilities safe, and keep our people safe as they go about this work of foreign policy. So that's another career. If there were any engineering folks or computer science, physics, or cybersecurity folks who joined us, the security engineering officer career could also be of interest. We have English language teaching roles under the education and cultural affairs roles. So lots of different roles here, just depending on what you actually want to get up and do every day. And I see we have a question. Oh, no, it's just a comment. Okay, fantastic. So let me pause here for a second, because I can talk about the application processes for any of these, because also the application process is going to be a little bit different for all of them. Some of these foreign service careers will start with a written exam. Others will start with just submitting kind of a more traditional application. So it just depends there. But before I kind of come back and talk about that, and while you think about any questions that you have, let me highlight a couple of other things. So that's just kind of a quick overview of all of the different diplomatic careers that we have. But of course, we also have domestic careers, as I mentioned, right, in the civil service. In civil service, again, most of those positions are going to be in Washington, D.C., also at those passport facilities across the U.S. and a couple of other facilities that we have. So with civil service positions, these are folks who are helping us, working on all the different types of things, to help us advance foreign policy issues. What you'll see here are 11 different kind of skill codes for civil service positions. These don't represent the actual jobs. There are dozens of hundreds of actual jobs available, but these are kind of the different skill areas where most of those jobs will be. So also quite varied, right? Contracts, budgeting, language teaching, foreign affairs, IT, accounting, lots of different roles here. Now, the civil service application process is quite different. All of these positions are going to be on usajobs.gov. So I have that little picture in the right-hand side there. And let me just stop sharing for a moment because I see some folks who joined from the waiting room, so just want to make sure they're admitted. Fantastic. So with the civil service, all of those positions are on usajobs.gov. That's where you would start your application process. Now, usajobs.gov, if some of you have started to look into federal government employment, you may already be familiar with this platform. All of the US federal government agencies use it for all of the domestic civil service careers. So usajobs.gov is sort of where you might have heard this term federal resume, which is a much lengthier resume than sort of a traditional off-the-shelf resume for some other careers. So for a federal resume, what happens when you go to apply on usajobs.gov for the civil service roles is that you're going to see the job position, right? Like you set up your parameters, search parameters, set up your account or profile on usajobs.gov, look for the jobs that you're interested in. And when you see a job that you're interested in the job posting or vacancy announcement, as we call them, you're going to see for civil service jobs the different requirements that they are looking for. So if you submit an off-the-shelf resume that is not tailored for these positions, it will not move forward. The position, your resume has to describe how you have experience in all of those position requirements that they are looking for. And so that's why with a federal resume, you will often have see people who have 5-page federal resumes. If they had a number of years of professional experience, maybe they have 10 pages or 15 pages of a federal resume, and they may have different kinds of federal resumes. Maybe, depending on what your experience or background is in, maybe you have like a public affairs resume and then a foreign policy resume. But for the civil service positions, the resume, the application that you submit on usajobs.gov must be very tailored, showing exactly how you have the experience that they are looking for if you hope to move forward in the application process. Now, what are we looking for the foreign service careers? This is a little bit different. Now, again, for some of those careers, you're going to have to demonstrate IT experience or demonstrate the engineering experience or, whichever of the other specialist careers. But in general, for all of the foreign service careers, whether it's a generalist career or a specialist career, we are looking for these 11 qualities and skills that we call the dimensions. You can find these on careers.state.gov as well, and it will go into a full definition of how we define these things. But these are the 11 skills and abilities and qualities that we are looking for all foreign service candidates, whether it's a foreign service officer generalist career or a foreign service specialist career. So I get the question a lot for the diplomatic careers. Antoinette, what is the State Department looking for? It is these 11 qualities and abilities. So with these attributes, this is what you are going to be assessed on at every stage of the application process for the foreign service careers. Again, no matter which career it is, built into the application process will be a way of assessing you against these 11 dimensions. Now, this could be in either showing us through essays, a written exam, how you have demonstrated these in the past. So tell us a time about when you demonstrated leadership in the past. What happened? What did you do? How did it turn out? Or we may give you scenarios that you could encounter in one of these foreign service careers and ask you how you would handle that scenario. And then we're also looking, do you include these 11 dimensions in your answer to that? Are you thinking through with these 11 dimensions in mind how you would handle that situation? So one of the most important things to review for the foreign service careers, in addition to, of course, if there's a written test or, take a practice test, prepare for that, but review these 11 dimensions because this is what we are looking for. If you get invited to the interview stage, we call it an assessment, then literally the assessors are going to have a clipboard with these 11 dimensions and they're looking to score you on how, again, you talk about how you've demonstrated these in the past or how you might demonstrate them in the future with the way that you handle different scenarios. So looking up the dimensions are really important. Also, for all of the foreign service careers, whether it starts with a written exam or not, the application, part of the application is going to be that you submit your resume type information, but it's also going to be that you prepare what we call 6 short essays that we call personal narratives. These are going to be directly connected back to these dimensions. So again, tell us a time when you demonstrated leadership. What was the situation? What did you do? How did it work out? So these are different ways where, again, we're assessing you on the dimensions at every step of the foreign service career applications. So let me see if we have a question here. I saw a little note. What if you don't have any experience and you're just starting out? That's also fine. For all of our foreign service careers, they're all entry level in a certain sort of way, in that there is no other job that prepares you to do these sorts of things as a diplomat. Even if you are an IT professional, even if you are an engineer, like yes, you may have IT experience and engineer experience, but the way that we do things is going to be different. So for all of these, certainly for the foreign service officer career, you don't have to have prior professional experience or a certain kind of degree, but you do have to be able to talk about something. So what can you be doing now to prepare if you don't feel that just yet you have sort of enough experience to talk about? So I get this question a lot from students as well. Be doing something. So that can look like a lot of different things. And I won't say you have to do an internship with us or you have to do foreign policy work, because you don't. I mean, if you look at foreign service officers, they've done everything, many, many different things before they join this career. So you can really do anything, but do something. It could be a study abroad. It could be that you do an internship somewhere, whatever you enjoy. It could be that you're doing extracurriculars. It could be that you're doing community volunteer experience. It could be your part-time work, your full-time work, your coursework, other kind of academic pursuits. But be doing something now, especially opportunities where you have a chance to develop these 11 dimensions, if you're interested in the foreign service in particular, so that you have something to talk about, you will have something to put in your essays, you will have something to talk about during the interview in terms of experience and how you've developed these skills. Let's see if we have another question. Okay, so that is good for now there. So the dimensions are going to be important for the foreign service officer careers, and then for civil service, again, that's a different kind of application. I can also talk about veterans preference and a couple of other programs that we have for veterans. If there are any veterans in the virtual room, please do let me know in the chat, and I can talk about a couple of things there. But otherwise, let me pause for a second to see what your questions are, where you would like me to kind of go back and focus, which particular careers might be piquing your interest, and I can talk about the application process for that particular career. So let me give a moment to pause for you all to think about this, because I know it's a lot of information, lots of different kinds of careers. And actually, while folks are thinking about questions, there's one more thing I did want to highlight here for our careers and for our foreign service careers in particular. So with our foreign service careers, which again are diplomatic careers where you're a diplomat like me, living and working at embassies and consulates overseas, what is the pay going to look like? So the actual salary scale is going to be a range. Your starting salary could be a range. The starting salary with the Foreign Service is dependent upon two things, and Human Resources will make that determination should we make you in offer of employment. But it's based on two things: your highest level of education achieved, and then also your number of years of professional experience. So based on those two things, HR will decide what your starting salary offer is. But with the Foreign Service, it is never just the base pay, never. There are always additional layers of the salary that you could be receiving, depending on where you're serving, what you're doing, which career you're in. And then there are a ton of benefits, which are things that essentially we pay so you don't have to. So also just additional kind of added purchasing power and salary power here. So I do want to highlight a couple of these things because I think obviously, when we go out into the career force, we have bills to pay, and we do want to know what does the overall compensation package look like. For the Foreign Service, it is quite competitive. So actually, before I talk more about this, I see we have a couple questions in the chat. Is it possible to settle in the foreign country you work in? Not entirely clear what that means, but if you mean to only go to one country for your career, that is not possible. In the Foreign Service, you have to be up for serving in a number of different countries and in a number of different regions. So you can't just go to one country and only serve there. Next question, for the Consular Fellows Program, how advanced do you have to be? So if you go onto the website, careers.state.gov website under Consular Fellows Program, it will describe to you what the test is going to be like and what level we are looking for. The level we are looking for is going to be different for each of those four languages. So depending on what language you speak, I would encourage you to go to that website to see exactly at what level you would need to speak that language. Okay, I think I answered all those. So let me go back to these two pyramids. So let me start with the benefits. So when you are a diplomat, what are the benefits in the Foreign Service? These are mostly going to be related to when you are serving overseas. So let's start at the bottom, and I'll just highlight some of the key benefits. For me personally, I think probably for a lot of people, the biggest financial benefit is that when you are a diplomat and you're serving overseas, we provide you housing at no cost. So the US Department of State assigns you housing and we pay for that housing. We pay for the housing as well as utilities except for Wi-Fi. So that's huge, right? I mean, housing or slash mortgage is our biggest expense every month. And so imagine not having to pay that for several years or maybe many years and how much money you can save up. It's a great benefit for everyone, especially for families too. So I get this question a lot too. Internet, can you have a family in the Foreign Service? 100%. And in fact, I would say probably the majority of those in the Foreign Service have some, some compilation of a family, whether it's if they bring their elderly parent with them overseas, or they have a spouse partner, or they have kids, stepkids, or fur babies, whatever it might be. We do have a lot of families in the Foreign Service. So having free housing when you are serving overseas and having that for years is huge, right? That could be easily, $5,000 or more in benefits a month. Then if you do have children in the Foreign Service, when you are serving overseas, if they're K through 12 age, we will pay for their private education overseas. So we try to send our kids to the best schools overseas. If it's the American school, British school, IB school, international school, whatever it is, that could be another $5,000 to $10,000 a month in benefits, right? Because this is a lifestyle. You are changing assignments every couple of years, and we do try to make that process a little bit easier for you and your family, as spouse, kids, and others. So free private education for your kids when you are serving overseas. There's also a student loan repayment program. Again, we will pay you to do professional development training in whichever career you're doing. We will pay you your full-time salary to be a language student and learn a foreign language if it's required for the assignment that you're doing. We also have a very good retirement pension package. Private sector companies nowadays don't do pensions anymore. That's long ago, a thing of the past. They'll do a 401k, maybe a 401k matching. We have that as well, 401k and 401k matching. But then we also have a very good pension program, which is basically a salary that you get, a paycheck you get every month when you retire. So that is also fantastic. And then, of course, we pay to move you, your family, and your things overseas to these various assignments. Now that's the benefits pyramid, some quick highlights. There's also the salary pyramid. So again, the benefits are what we pay for, so you don't have to, so it's extra money you have to spend. And then the salary, these are actually layers of additional salary that you could get directly to your paycheck every 2 weeks when you get paid, depending on what you're doing, where you're serving. So again, it's never just the base pay with us. You'll see overseas locality pay as the first, or even domestic locality pay. So depending on where you are serving, if it's Washington, D.C. or any country overseas, or even, here in Las Vegas, there's something called locality pay, which is based on how expensive that city is. So if you are serving, let's say domestically, and let's say you're serving in Washington, D.C., D.C. is an expensive city, so you will get a DC locality pay. And then when you're overseas, you will also get locality pay, again, depending on how expensive the city is. If it is a really expensive city overseas, think about like a Tokyo or a London. You could also get cost of living adjustments. I received a cost of living adjustment when I was living in Italy for one of my assignments. And that is actually the only salary benefit that is tax-free. So that's nice. So that's just direct in your paycheck. Then there are also annual increases, sort of small increases in salary, basically to keep up with inflation. And each year that will be dependent upon what Congress sets that to be. And then there's also something called danger pay and hardship allowance. So what is this? You can kind of think of it as every embassy and consulate overseas has a percentage point assigned to it of difficulty, right? And so my very first assignment was Australia. The percentage point was 0. There's no hardship living in Australia. But I also served in Afghanistan, which had the highest level of hardship. And while I was in Afghanistan, I was basically earning double my salary for the year that I was serving there. And there's everything in between Australia and Afghanistan in terms of level of difficulty. So that's additional money that you can make as well. If you do happen to already speak a foreign language, and depending on which one it is and what high or how high a level it's at, you could also get additional monies. And then particularly for our STEM careers, for a couple of our STEM careers, we have signing bonuses actually for the IT career, for the engineering career. And then if you do kind of your continued education, like keep up with your certifications in the IT diplomat career, for example, then you can also get additional money. So basically, overall, the compensation package for the diplomatic careers in particular is quite competitive. So let me stop sharing my screen here for a moment and see what other questions folks might have. But then I also do want to share a couple of links. So I've been mentioning that for the careers, all of that information can be found on careers.state.gov, but I'll put it in the link here as in the chat here as well. And then if you do want to get information on one of these careers, or maybe on a number of these careers, because you could be eligible for multiple things. You could be eligible to apply for Foreign Service Officer, to apply for some of the specialist careers, maybe office management, special agent, a couple of different things depending on your major. And I do always tell people, apply for everything for which you are eligible and in which you are interested, and then see how it all shakes out. But definitely put as many eggs into the basket as you can. If you do want to get information on some of these careers, in particular, especially when we do an information session dedicated to one of these careers, then I'm going to share a link here where you can register with me. Let me know what you're interested in. It'll ask for your name and email, and then it'll ask you, do you have something in particular in mind? And if you're open to hearing about a number of our careers, then you can put no. But if you do have something in mind based on the careers that I was sharing today, then you can click yes, and you can select up to 3 different opportunities there. Now, if you are at a stage where you're also still interested in internships, that I'm going to cover in tomorrow's session. But if you are interested in internships, I will just say that for our paid internships, they're only open for 7 days, and even I don't know when they're going to be open until maybe a week or 2 before. So if you are especially interested in internships, I would select one of the internship programs, selecting like student internship program, for example. If you select the student internship program or any of the internship programs, that should mean that you get an email whenever any of those open for application. So I'll give folks a moment to take a look at that registration link if you do want to get information on some of these in particular. And then let me come back to the chat while folks take a look at that link and see what other questions we may have here. All right, question from Colby. What's the time frame for application? Colby, are you talking about civil service or foreign service? It's going to be a little bit different. You can clarify in the chat, and then I can give you the best answer. Brianna's questioning about the recording. As I mentioned, when we started the session, the recording is going to be placed online later on. And let me just post again what that link is. This is my UNLV Diplomat in Residence page on Career Launch. And so here you can also find some of the links we talked about at future events that I do, but the recordings from today's session and tomorrow's session on students are going to be placed on this Career Launch page. So for the civil service, let me back up. For the foreign service and civil service careers, you are going to need a security clearance. Probably not a surprise, right? As a U.S. federal government agency, you're going to need a security clearance. Now, for the civil service careers, it's just the clearance that you need. For the foreign service careers, because you're living overseas, you will also have to do what we call a minimum medical qualification review. Now, the security clearance by far is going to be the longest part of the application process. It doesn't actually take that long. Well, civil service probably shorter, foreign service a little bit longer to go from submitting your application to hearing and then seeing if you make it onto an interview. But that security clearance is going to be the longest part of the application. And I can't tell you how long that will be for you because everyone's lived a different life. The security investigators will look into, that life. For some people, maybe it's 7 to 8 months. For some people, the security clearance can take a year. I've seen a couple of cases where it takes more than a year. And the fact that the clearance takes a longer time, it's not a bad thing necessarily. But let's say you're someone who has traveled extensively overseas. That's fantastic. It means you have an interest in the world. That's lovely. We want to see that. Or let's say you're someone who has a lot of foreign national contacts. That could all be just fine, but we're just going to need to look into all of that. And so that will take some time. So I can't tell you exactly how long the security clearance will take, but it will be by far certainly the longest part of the application process. So Brianna, your question, if you can't make the session tomorrow, that session is also going to be recorded and will also be on that exact same link that I just put in the chat. So both today's session on careers and tomorrow's session on student programs will be posted on that website afterwards. Other questions? Anything else folks want me to revisit? The application processes for any of the foreign service careers, veterans programs and benefits, anything else, please go ahead and put in the chat and I'm happy to revisit anything and to go into more depth. Minutes, and it's a lot of information to digest. No. Okay, question from Miranda. Are the foreign positions based on a rolling submission or do they fill up? I'm a little unclear about that. Do you mean to apply or do you mean once you have one of the foreign service careers, how you get assigned to the different places? Okay, to apply. It depends. Which foreign service position are you interested in? Some have applications where you can apply any day during the year. Others are only open at certain times during the year. So Miranda, is there a particular career that you were interested in? And then I can speak to when that is open for application. And actually, this is a good point while I wait for your answer, Miranda. On the foreign service assignments process, how does this work? So when you are a diplomat, how do you get assigned to all these various places? So if you are a diplomat, whether you're a foreign service officer generalist, like I am, or you are a foreign service specialist, you're a diplomat that specializes, no matter which one, if you're in the foreign service in either capacity, your first 2 assignments are going to be what we call directed, meaning we're going to tell you where to go. But it's not that scary. You get a list in your orientation class of all the positions that are possible. You rank them high, medium, and low. You have a conversation with basically the equivalent of a career counselor to talk about what you're hoping to get out of that assignment, whether it's learning a new foreign language or using an existing foreign language that you have. Maybe it's that you want to go somewhere where your spouse or partner can get work. Maybe it's that you want to go somewhere where the schools are good for your kids, whatever it might be. You'll have that conversation, and then the career counselors have the tough job of trying to fit all the puzzle pieces together. So what are the needs of the U.S. Department of State, and what are the preferences and interests of the folks, and then deciding how they fill all those positions. So your first 2 assignments are directed in the Foreign Service, but it is a bit collaborative. Then after those first 2 assignments in the Foreign Service, you are only pursuing assignments that you are interested in. So you have much more control and agency over your career because you're only putting yourself forward for positions that you want and that you're interested in. Next questions. Next question, Colby, are there recruiters that show job openings or host events? So that is that registration link that I was sharing with you earlier. If there is a particular type of job that you're interested in, surely we will do an information session on it. We host information sessions all the time. So mark which career you're interested in. So let's say you are interested in the human resources officer career. It's a foreign service specialist career. Then mark that you're interested in that. I believe the next time that will open up is going to be very early in 2025. So if you mark human resources officer, then you will get an email when that job opens for application, and you will also get an email whenever we do an information session on that job. So that link that I shared is important if you want to receive information on any of these things, if you're open to a number of different career paths, or if you do have something in particular in mind, a certain career that you want to get more information on, select it there when you click on that registration link, and that's where you can be informed about those info sessions. And certainly, of course, when that job opens up for application. Questions? And for the Foreign Service Officer generalist career, again, that's what I do, generalist diplomat. The first step in the application is a written exam called the Foreign Service Officer Test. That written test is offered 3 times a year in February, June, and October. And you can see on our website exactly sort of when that's going to be offered. It will take you to a link where you can register. But before each of those 3 offerings of that written test, we will also always do a prep session, which I strongly recommend folks attend. So if you are interested in the Foreign Service Officer application process and attending or getting, the invitation to attend one of those prep sessions, then I would also mark that in the registration link, which brings me actually to another resource that I do want to show to the folks here. So let me share my screen again here. Give me 1 second. This is careers.state.gov. This is our recruitment page. And so if you look under career paths, you can come back and visit all those things we talked about, the dimensions that I was talking about, Foreign Service Officer, the 5 career tracks, what is the application process, the Foreign Service Specialist careers, the Consular Fellows Program, the language test for the person who had that question about at what level do I have to speak one of those 4 languages. This page will tell you about that. If you go to recruitment and then recorded events, I know it's under a little bit of a strange title, but if you go to recorded events, you are going to see recordings from previous webinars that we have done, including, for example, the last Foreign Service Officer Test prep session we did was in September, and here's the video for that here. We have a video of a panel of Consular Fellow folks who talked about their experience, the finance officer, our financial management officer role. We have a video there. We have videos basically on almost every single career that we have. So I would invite you to take a look at these resources as well, these videos, to do a more of a deep dive on any of these programs. And we have videos that are not just about our careers, but also about our internships. So that's one about our internships. I did one with a colleague of mine about our fellowship programs. That's there. Also, I believe it's on page 3 of the videos. Again, if you're interested in particular in the Foreign Service Officer career, you'll recall that there are 5 career tracks you'd have to choose from: consular, econ, political, management, or public diplomacy. And we actually did a panel series just a bit ago on each of those 5 with officers who are in those 5 career tracks talking about what they actually do. So the consular one is here, political is here, econ, public diplomacy, management. So I would highly encourage you to take a look at those videos too. You can actually hear from people on each of those career tracks to get a feel for what they do. Also, now I provided on the other side how to get in touch with me, but let me show you another way here, which is if you go to careers.state.gov, click on Connect with a Diplomat, and then click on Southwest. It's me. So I'm legit. I promise. I'm with the U.S. Department of State. I am a diplomat with the U.S. Department of State. And if you go to under my picture here, you'll see an email button that will take you directly to that DIR Southwest at state.gov email that I shared earlier. And I check that email again every single day. So reach out to me if you have any questions. And then also, this will take you to my Diplomat in Residence page. Now, let me see if I can share this or if I need to share a different tab. 1 moment. Okay, So this is what my diplomat in residence page looks like. So don't look it up by my name because then you'll see the personal LinkedIn where I don't post anything. It's going to look like this, which is going to be the State Department, the Diplomat in Residence Southwest page. And here I'm posting daily different opportunities. So we're having Native American Heritage Month panel coming up. For students, our Wrangell Summer Enrichment Program is open. The Consular Fellows Program, we're actually doing an info session on the Consular Fellows Program on November 20th. For those who are interested in that, it's going to go in detail about the career, but mostly about the application process and how to have a good application for that. So I'm posting about all these sorts of things basically daily because we have something going on daily. Question on the recording. Christine, maybe you know the answer, or maybe Lindsay knows the answer as to how soon these videos might be available for folks. I'm not sure. Do you know when they'll be posted on Career Launch?
We can connect with the international office on campus and see how quickly they can download and send it our way, and then we can just very quickly upload that. I think we'll have to work on closed captioning, so probably by end of the week. But yeah,
Okay, so it should be before Thanksgiving at some point.
yes, for sure.
Okay. So Miranda, hopefully that answers your question. And I see we are getting close to the end of the hour here, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Any final question or two that folks had? Anything else that I can cover? Again, I know it's a lot of information, so do do sign up with the registration link to get information on the specific careers that you're interested in, because surely we will do an information session dedicated to all of these different careers, in the coming months. And here's the registration link again. Any other questions? Give it a couple seconds, and then we'll go ahead and conclude. I don't think I'm seeing anything in the chat. Then the registration link is there, careers.state.gov is there. So take a look, explore, see what could be of interest to you. If you are at a stage in your academic career where you're also still thinking about internships, maybe fellowships for grad school, then join tomorrow's session. It will be the same time, 1 p.m., same registration link, I believe. And we're going to do a deep dive into all of the student programs, which are going to be internships, study abroad scholarships, and fellowships. So lots of good stuff tomorrow too. And also, again, that will be recorded and put on the same link that I shared earlier. All right, well, I do not see any other questions. So I will thank you all for spending just after your lunch hour with me. Thank you all for joining. Again, the video recording will be up on that website link that I shared in about a week or so, and join tomorrow's session if you want to learn about student programs as well. But whatever you decide to do, I wish you the best of luck, and hopefully I see some of you tomorrow in our part 2. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Have a wonderful day.